They told me there was no seat for me. I didn't argue. I just reached into my pocket, pulled out an envelope, and handed it to the officiant. On the front, in my late wife's handwriting, it said, "Read before the vows." And the moment he opened it, the entire wedding stopped. If you want the part before that moment, the part that makes you understand why I didn't yell, why I didn't walk out, why I chose a piece of paper over a scene, then you have to start with the lilies. They were everywhere. On the pews, on the pedestal vases, tucked into the arch of eucalyptus over the altar. The whole chapel smelled like a memory. Claire loved lilies. She said they didn't smell like flowers so much as they smelled like beginnings. She'd said the same thing on our wedding day, breathless and laughing, carrying a bouquet that kept bumping her veil, whispering, "Don't let me trip, Nate. Don't you dare let me trip." So when I stepped inside the hall and the scent hit me, I did what you do when you smell something that belongs to the only person who ever made you certain about the world. I closed my eyes and let it break my heart a little. "Sir?" A young usher in a too-tight tux hovered with a clipboard. He had the face of a boy who hadn't slept because he'd been told a dozen things could go wrong, and they all felt like his fault. "Can I help you find your seat?" "Father of the groom," I said, and I tried to make it sound like an answer instead of a question. He glanced at the list and traced lines with his finger, then did it again, slower, as if careful reading might invent a name. "What's the last name?" "Carter." "Nathan Carter." He found Carter and let out a breath. "You're here. Okay. Let me just..." He flipped a page, then another. "It looks like you're general." "General?" The word felt like sand. Unassigned. Standing room. We had some overflow on the bride's side, a couple of last-minute additions. "I can bring a chair to the back if you..." He stopped because even he heard what he'd just said. I looked past him over the rows of white-draped chairs, each with its calligraphed name in careful ink. Mother of the bride, father of the bride. Grandparents, Uncle Joel, Aunt Marianne, a row of cousins. I found the row that should have been ours and saw strangers. Shoulder to shoulder, the front felt crowded, as if there were no space left for anyone who hadn't been invited months earlier to sit in the story. "I'll talk to the coordinator," the boy said quickly, already flagging down a woman in black with a headset and the assured walk of someone who considered herself caffeine with legs. "Ms. Harmon?" She pivoted, smile already on, the kind grown in a mirror. "Yes? Do we need a water basket in the foyer? We can add a basque." "This is Mr. Carter," the usher said. "Father of the groom." Her mouth stayed smiling, her eyes didn't. "Of course. Hello, I'm Carol's coordinator. Isn't it a beautiful day?" The weather held. "You never know with September. Can I help you find the groom? He's in the anteroom." "I'm trying to find my seat," I said. "Well, we have a very streamlined plan today. Very modern. Open. Seating with family priorities and..." "Family priorities?" I repeated. And if my voice had an edge, it wasn't because I meant it to. It had an edge because I felt my ribs turning into a cage. She cocked her head, sympathetic the way billboards are sympathetic. "We had to make some tough calls to balance numbers. The bride's family is quite large. But you'll have a wonderful view from the back." The photographer said the long shots from the aisle are stunning. A wonderful view from the back. There are a lot of ways to tell a person they don't matter. Some people use slurs, some use silence. That line, "a wonderful view from the back," felt like a scalpel. Small, precise, designed to do its work without blood. I could have argued. I could have told her we buried Claire 8 years ago, and I taught our son to shave in a mirror, clouded by the steam of a kettle because the hot water broke and I didn't have money for a plumber. I could have told her that when Michael was 12 and the goalie on the other team blasted him and broke his nose, I wiped blood from his shirt with the tail of mine and told him he was brave because that's what his mother would have said. I could have told her I sold Claire's grandmother's china on Facebook Marketplace to buy him a suit for a college interview, that I once drove 6 hours round trip to pick up a laptop someone was giving away because his broke mid-finals. I could have told her all of that and watched her square shoulders bend around a new definition of general. I didn't. Not because it wouldn't have been right to say it, but because some truths don't fit in rooms built for looks. "Dad?" The voice skimmed across me like a stone on water. I turned. Michael stood in the doorway to the side hall, tuxedo immaculate, hair tamed with the kind of grudging cooperation his cowlick had resisted for 27 years. He looked like every version of himself stacked in one frame. The boy in Batman pajamas who had slept in the laundry basket during a thunderstorm, the teenager with oil under his nails from fixing a friend's car because they couldn't afford a shop, the freshman who'd hugged me too fast on move-in day, and then texted me a photo of the cafeteria pizza, like we were keeping each other alive with proof of food. "You look good," I said. He smiled, and it was real, until his eyes flicked to Ms. Harmon, and it turned into something he wore. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Just for a minute?" Ms. Harmon, headset chirping, gestured like an usher at a stage door. 2 minutes. We go live in 12. He drew me into the anteroom, which smelled like starch and perfume and nerves. A full-length mirror leaned against the wall, and a tuxedo jacket hung over the back of a chair with the kind of care that makes a person wonder if it's the most important thing in the world, until you remember it's just fabric carrying a day. "Dad," he said, and the word already sounded like an apology. "There's no seat," I said quietly. He exhaled, shoulders sagging. "I know." He didn't look at me when he said it. He traced the edge of the mirror with his fingertip and watched his own mouth move in the reflection. He had Claire's mouth, kind even when it was saying hard things. "You know?" I repeated, because sometimes repeating is the only way to stop yourself from swallowing something that will make you sick. "Please don't be mad," he said. "It's just... there were fights about the seating. You wouldn't believe it. Her mom has this list and people flew in, and then her dad's boss, well, he practically raised her. He's like a second father, and the photographer wanted to stop." I didn't say it loud. I said it the way you say a word when you're trying not to cry. "Did you ask for me to be in the front?" He rubbed the back of his neck. When he was 6, he used to do the same thing after he knocked over something, and expected the sound before it hit the floor. "I told them you'd understand," I laughed. It came out wrong, tinny and sharp. "Understand what?" "That it's just 1 hour," he said, rushing. "Just the ceremony. Dad, I will sit you at my table for dinner. We'll have pictures. He stopped because I took a step back, like the room was a wave and I'd lost my footing. For a second, I swear I smelled baby shampoo and realized it was just lilies. Or maybe grief keeps its own supply of scents. "Your mother," I said carefully, "always said there would be a seat for me at everything that mattered to you. Even when you got too tall to sit on my lap, she said, 'There's a seat for you.' Beside him, Nate." She said it like a blessing. "I know," he said. His voice broke. "I know. I can't fight with them today. I've been fighting for months. The menu, the music, the guest list. Dad, I'm tired. There is a way to hold your child's face in your hands without touching it. You do it with your eyes. You do it by letting everything you've done for them pour out and wrap around. Them like the quilt you kept in the trunk for soccer games. I did that then." "Okay," I said, and the word didn't mean what it sounded like. It didn't mean I agree. It meant I won't put another weight on your shoulders. "Okay," said again, and this time it meant I will be the adult, because you deserve to be the child one last time. "Thank you," he whispered, relief collapsing his body forward a fraction. He reached for me like he might hug me and then stopped himself, glancing at his jacket, as if creases would ruin the day. "You have cereal on your cuff," I said to save us both, and pinched an invisible fleck away. He laughed, the sound sudden and clear, and for a heartbeat we were in our kitchen. Morning sun across the table, 2 bowls, 1 father, 1 son, and the world not yet complicated. 2 minutes, Ms. Harmon called from the hall. "Groom 2. Position," he squeezed my forearm. "I love you." "I know," I said. When Claire said it to me, she always added, "I knew first." I almost said it now. I didn't. Maybe because I wanted to keep something of her that wasn't a weapon. After he left, I didn't go to the back. I stood in the side aisle and watched people file in like elegant birds in a migration, sequins and chiffon and shoes, that hurt and determination not to show it. Carol, mother of the bride, pearls you only wear when you want people to know you own them, directed a pair of ushers to shift a chair near the front. I thought maybe it was mine. Then a man I didn't know sat in it, patted his stomach, and said, "Much better," to no one in particular. "Nate," a voice hissed softly. I turned. It was Linda, my sister. She had driven 3 hours that morning and arrived with mascara already on, which is what you do when you plan to be photographed next to happiness. She hugged me with the kind of hug that understood the state of my ribs. "Where are you sitting?" "Back," I said. She pulled away enough to read my face. "What?" "It's fine." She looked toward the front and found what I'd found, my absence sitting in a chair shaped like me. "It's not fine, Linda," I said quietly. "Don't do it. Not today. Not for me." She blinked hard and nodded. "Then I'm with you." She took my arm. We started toward the back together. When we reached the last row, an elderly man in a brown suit smiled up at us with watery eyes. "Isn't it lovely?" he said, and squeezed his wife's hand like the answer was her. "It is," I said. And I meant it. It was. Whatever else this was, it was also love. I have learned you can hold two truths at once. It's uncomfortable. It's also the only way to carry most things worth carrying. I took the aisle spot in the last row. Linda slipped in beside me. Everyone in front of us was contained in some official way. Cousin, friend of the bride, neighbor. Back here, we were the ones who helped old ladies to the restroom and kept toddlers from sprinting into the aisle. I didn't mind. I've always liked useful better than seen. In my inner jacket pocket, the envelope waited. It had lived in my dresser for years, under Claire's sweaters white with the ghost of her perfume, then in a box labeled "Important." I never opened because it felt like tempting fate to check whether anything was. I hadn't taken it out because I wanted to use it. God knows I hadn't woken up planning to read letters from the dead into a microphone. I had taken it because I heard Claire's voice in the shower that morning. No angels, nothing mystical, just the echo of the cadence she used when she said practical things that saved our lives in ways we didn't notice until later. "Bring it, Nate, in case." I wrote it for a day, not a moment. There is a difference. "Do you want water?" Linda whispered. "I'm okay." "You look pale." "I'm okay," I said again, because sometimes you pick the easiest lie and sit in it like a church pew. The quartet shifted from scales to songs, and the murmur in the room turned into orchestrated silence. The officiant, a man with kind shoulders and the sort of face people trust with secrets, stepped to the front, and people who don't say grace still bowed their heads out of habit. "Welcome," he said, and his voice made the room smaller, in the good way. "We are gathered to witness—" "Phones off," Ms. Harmon hissed along the side aisle. One of the groomsmen, a boy with hair so sharp it could cut glass, smirked and tucked his phone away. "Please rise," the officiant said. People rose like a great animal shifting to a new position. Heads turned. The doors at the back of the chapel opened. Anna stood with her father, white bright enough to make the room choose to believe in it. I'd only seen her twice, the sort of meetings you have when everyone performs kindness and hopes the rehearsal counts. She'd been sweet in the way young people are when they've never had to set down their own vision of a future for someone else's comfort. Claire would have loved her laugh. That thought made something hot move behind my eyes. Anna's father lifted her hand onto his arm like he was setting down something he had polished his whole life. They stepped forward. The first row reached for Kleenex, then pretended they had allergies. Someone in the middle sniffed like a clogged clarinet. Linda squeezed my forearm and whispered, "Breathe." I did. And while I breathed, I realized Michael wasn't looking at the doors. He was looking at the back of the room, at me. He found me in the last row and held there just for a second, like a person holds to a railing when the boat tilts. His mouth moved around a word. I couldn't hear it, but I know my name when I see it. I don't know what would have happened if I had stayed in my seat and let the day fold around me like I was one of the decorations. Maybe nothing. Maybe I would have gone home and put the envelope back under the sweaters and told myself the right thing to do is the quiet thing. But I didn't. If there is a moment when you stop being afraid of being called difficult because someone you loved taught you the difference between quiet and good, then this was mine. I stood. Not dramatically, not with a scrape of chair or a throat cleared into a microphone. I stood in the way people stand when their foot has fallen asleep and they need blood to come back. "Where are you going?" Linda whispered. "To keep a promise," I whispered back. I stepped into the aisle. For a heartbeat, the back of the room became the front, and the front of the room didn't know it yet. Ms. Harmon materialized like a bouncer. Sir, please." I didn't look at her. I walked up the side, not the center, because this wasn't about me. It never had been. When I reached the front, I stopped one step shy of the altar and lifted a hand toward the officiant. He looked down at me and in that second decided to trust me, which is a holy thing when you think about it. He stepped closer. I reached into my pocket and felt the familiar edge, the crease worn soft by my thumb over 8 years of taking it out and putting it back. The envelope was cream, weighted, the kind of paper Claire would have chosen because she believed even the smallest things deserved a little ceremony. Read before the vows in her looping hand. She had written those words at our kitchen table one winter afternoon while Michael was at practice and snow made a quiet of its own against the window. I had made tea and told her she was dramatic, and she had told me, no, realistic, and we had been both right and too young to know it. I held it up. The officiant took it. His fingers brushed mine the way people touch something that looks fragile and could be a bomb or a baby. "Please," I said. Just that. Not, "This will fix it." Not, "This will hurt you." Just please. He glanced at the front row. Carol's mouth became a line you could measure a building with. Anna's father's hand tightened around her fingers in a way that said he had thoughts about timing and decorum, and how dare you? Michael breathed like he had been underwater and saw a rope. The officiant set his book on the lectern and slipped a finger under the envelope flap. The paper made a sound like someone sighing after holding it in too long. He unfolded the letter inside. His eyes scanned the first line, then the second, and something changed in his face. A softening, like snow rounding off a hard edge of curb. "Before we proceed," he said, and the room, trained for choreography, froze. "A note has been presented to me. It was written by the groom's mother. It is a strange thing to hear the dead named in the present tense on a day made for photographs. Heads turned toward me the way flowers turn without asking to find the sun." He lifted the letter. "It is requested that these words be read before the vows." Carol stood, as if standing might make the sentence bounce off. "With respect," she said, smiling the kind of smile you use when you'd prefer not to bare your teeth. "We have a schedule. There's a string arrangement. The lighting—" Anna's father touched her elbow. "Carol," he murmured. And it was the kind of warning men give women when they remember they're not actually the ones in charge. She sat, trembling with the effort. Michael reached for the back of a chair and held on. The quartet trailed to a stop, one violin squeaking, its last bow like a bird surprised by its own song. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was filled with 100 small breaths and the sound of linen shifting as a whole room leaned forward. The officiant looked at the paper again, and when he began, he didn't perform. He didn't even project. He read the way people read at bedsides and in kitchens, the way Claire used to read notes she stuck on the fridge so we wouldn't forget milk and also wouldn't forget each other. If you're hearing this, it means the world got shorter for me than I planned. When I wrote it, the kettle was boiling and your father was humming off key and there was salt on the mat from where you'd tracked in snow. Ordinary things. If it is your wedding day, Michael, I want you to know that ordinary is the miracle. It is the place vows live after the flowers go home. Someone laughed and then put a hand to their mouth because sometimes relief sounds like laughter first. Can't know the woman you chose. I hope she laughs at your bad jokes and insists on carrying the heavier bag sometimes. I hope she forgives you when you're late and reminds you to eat when you forget and rolls her eyes at you in a way that means I love you despite yourself. I watched Anna's face loosen as if a rope she didn't know was around her chest had slackened. I do know this. You do not stand there on your own. You stand there because your father got up when his alarm went off for jobs that hurt his back. Because he learned how to braid hair for me when chemo took my hands for a while. Because he sat on bleachers with a thermos when the wind made a knife of our town and told you that you were brave when blood on your shirt made you doubt it. I had not expected to cry. Grief after 8 years becomes a thing you know how to carry in public, like a heavy bag you switch from shoulder to shoulder without dropping. But there are sentences that cut through your practiced muscles. This was one. So if you are beginning a family today, remember this. No family begins without him. Make sure your father is sitting in the front row. If he is not, pause. Fix it. A celebration can start late. A legacy cannot start wrong. That was the first time the room made a sound it hadn't prepared. A gasp. No, a folding in of noise, like a wave drawing breath before it hits. People reached for tissues. People looked at me and then away, the way you look at the sun and blink back your own audacity. To the woman marrying my son, the letter continued, and the officiant's voice shook like he'd discovered a door inside himself that led to a different, better house. Welcome. I have loved you since he first brought home glitter on his jacket and refused to explain. I hope someone is loving you as well as you deserve today. Please do me a favor and make room in the front wherever you go for the man who did all the quiet work that brought you a good man. I didn't look at Carol. I didn't need to. The sound of pearls being clenched is quieter than television, but louder than regret. If this is awkward to read, forgive me. I have been a mother. We are experts at awkward, at interrupting, and then pretending we didn't. I am asking you to pause, not because your day is about me, but because your life is about remembering where the good parts started. The officiant lowered the letter a fraction. I realized I had been holding my breath. So had half the room. He looked at Michael. My son looked like someone who had been promised air and had been given a window instead. He swallowed. He took one, stepped down from the altar, then another, until he was level with the first row. He kept walking, and the aisle became a river he crossed to where I stood in the eddy of the side aisle. When he reached me, he opened his arms and folded me into them, with the strength of a man and the gratitude of a child. His tuck scratched my cheek. He shook when he exhaled. I'm sorry, he said into my shoulder. I know, I said, and it meant I forgive you, and also I understand, and also you don't have to be the one who holds everything together anymore. He straightened, wiped his eyes with the heel of his palm, and turned to the officiant. We need a chair, he said, up front, for my father. A chair scraped. An usher stumbled and then sprinted. Carol's mouth opened and closed twice, fish learning gravity. Anna's father, a man I was prepared to dislike on principle, nodded. Once to an usher and then stood to offer his seat until one was brought. I didn't take it. I waited for the chair meant for me. They placed it next to mother of the groom, which was empty because the world is rude, and the emptiness felt for the first time like a space Claire had saved, not one she had been erased from. I walked forward to it, and the walk was a short procession no one had rehearsed, but everyone knew. I sat. I folded my hands over my jacket where the envelope had been. My palm had a faint white crescent from where the paper edge had pressed into it. It looked like a scar, the kind you earn and keep. The officiant lifted the letter again. His mouth moved as if he planned to continue, then stopped as if there was a sentence he needed to say first. He looked at Anna. Would you like me to continue? He asked. And the question held a universe. Are you brave enough to let this day become better than you planned? Anna glanced at her mother, and if this were a different story, maybe she would have deferred. But she didn't. She lifted her chin the way a girl does when she decides to be a woman in front of witnesses. She nodded. Please, she said, read. And that's when the string quartet, on some instinct older than playlists, lowered their bows. And the sunlight shifted on the lilies as if someone outside drew back a cloud, and the photographer forgot to shoot for a whole, holy beat. The officiant looked down at the last fold of paper, slid his thumb under it, and opened the letter all the way. Everything else, the whispers, the choreography, the schedule, fell quiet, and the moment he began to read again, the entire wedding stopped. The envelope looked small in the officiant's hands, too small to hold anything that could tilt a whole room. He turned it once, as if feeling its weight might tell him what to do next. The quartet's bow arms hovered, not sure whether to keep a note alive or let it die. Even the candles along the aisle seemed to lean closer. Carol rose halfway from her chair. "Excuse me," she said brightly, the kind of brightness people put on when a fuse is burning. "We have a very tight timeline. There's a—" "Mom," Anna whispered, without looking at her. The officiant eased the flap open. The sound was delicate, like silk tearing. He unfolded a single sheet of cream paper, edges softened by years, and breathed out once, gathering himself. Then he lifted his eyes to the crowd and began. "Michael, love, I wish I were sitting behind you right now, tugging your jacket flat and whispering, 'Don't lock your knees or you'll faint like your Uncle Ray did at Aunt Lila's wedding.' If I'm not there, it means time did that rude thing it does. So I'm sending my voice ahead." A low ripple of laughter found its way through the back rows. Uncle Ray, 2 aisles up, wiped his forehead with a napkin as if on cue. "I don't know who you're marrying. I only know the shape of your laugh at 7, and the way you pretended not to like the sparkly frosting on your 10th birthday cake, and the sound the front door made when you came home late and tried to be careful because your father doesn't sleep as hard as he pretends. I know your kindness. Don't lose it today in a room full of plans." The officiant paused just long enough for the words to sink. In the 3rd row, a woman pressed a hand to her chest. In the back, a toddler stopped fidgeting and stared, as if even very small people recognize a different kind of voice when it arrives. Michael's chin dropped. He wasn't sobbing, not yet. But the posture of him, shoulders forward, hands unclenching, at his sides, belonged to the boy who used to crawl onto the couch with his mother when the thunder got too close. I had to fix my eyes on the arch of eucalyptus above the altar to steady my own breath. "Your father," the letter went on, and the officiant's voice warmed. "Won't tell you this part, so I will. The year you broke your arm and I was too dizzy from the medicine to drive, he carried you down 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was out. He did it in socks because he couldn't find his shoes in the panic. He bled through to the heel. He told you jokes in the ER so you wouldn't see his hands shaking. When rent was due and we were short, he sold his guitar without telling me, and we pretended the house was quiet because we were sophisticated now." A soft sound, half laugh, half gasp, moved like wind through wheat. I saw Carol's jaw flex. The story didn't fit the picture she'd painted of me in her head. The man from a different world. The man with edges that didn't match the silverware. "You don't stand at the altar alone," the letter said. "You stand there because your father worked 2 jobs with knees that complain about rain. You stand there because he learned how to do girl hair on YouTube so I wouldn't feel ugly when mine fell out. You stand there because he said yes to you 1,000 quiet times when the world told him he could only afford to say no." Michael made a small, helpless sound in the back of his throat and swiped the heel of his hand under his eye. His best man, Evan, stepped an inch closer like a shadow that remembered its job. Carol lifted her hand again. "Father, really, this is—" Anna reached back without turning and touched her mother's wrist. Not a grab, not a fight, just a touch. Carol's hand lowered an inch, then another. She stared at the paper as if it were a magician's handkerchief hiding coins she'd prefer not to see. The officiant's voice gathered, like a river finding its main current. "If you are beginning a family today, and you are, even if you don't think of it that way, then begin it with the truth that made you. No family begins without him. Make sure he is sitting in the front row. If he is not, pause. Fix it. People can wait to clap. Don't make them wait to be acknowledged." I felt Linda's hand on my shoulder from the last row, steady as a metronome. I hadn't realized I was leaning until she put me upright again. To the woman marrying my son. The letter shifted, and the congregation seemed to tilt with it. "You don't know me. I hope you'll want to. I hope you'll make him eat vegetables sometimes and not just noodles in a pan. I hope you'll laugh when he insists he can carry all the grocery bags in one trip. And I hope, wherever you end up living, city or country, near or far, you'll leave a chair at the front of your life for the man who walked him this far." The lilies moved a fraction in a draft from the side door. The air felt thinner, like mountains. In the second row, the bride's grandmother, tiny, regal, a silk scarf tied neat at her throat, took off her glasses and dabbed. She did it with the dignity of a woman who knows what it costs to raise people. The officiant glanced toward me and then back to the page. If this letter has landed awkwardly, forgive me, Claire had written. Mothers are famous for awkward landing. We don't always time it right. But I'm asking you to pause kindly before the vows. If my husband isn't in the front row, put him there. Start the rest of your lives with the right people in the right places. He stopped. Nobody breathed for a second. Then the room exhaled as one, like a sea settling after a boat passes. Michael moved first. His feet found the steps as if the riser had a memory of him. He walked down from the altar and, along the aisle, people leaned away and toward him at the same time, leaving an open channel that felt older than any plan, something made by instinct, not by a seating chart. He didn't look left or right. He came straight to me. Up close, he looked both older and very young. There were lines at the corners of his eyes I hadn't seen last week. There was also the exact 7-year-old I'd pulled in from the rain once and wrapped in a towel so big it turned him into a moving pile of laundry. "I'm sorry," he said, and the words were not dramatic. They were small and true and heavy. "Dad, He couldn't finish. I stood because sitting felt wrong while he carried that. "It's all right," I heard myself say, and realized it was the thing I've said to him more than any other sentence in his life. It was not a dismissal. It was the floor under our feet. He took my hand. It was damp and warm. He guided me forward, and suddenly there were a dozen hands moving at once. Ushers lifting a chair, Evan setting his own place card aside, Linda slipping into the aisle to let us pass, Carol rising as if to block and then almost imperceptibly stepping back. A chair appeared in the front row with the quiet efficiency of an apology. I sat. Michael stayed standing in front of me, eyes searching my face for signs like he used to check weather apps for soccer practice. I gave him a nod that meant, go. On. He nodded back. He climbed the steps again. The officiant hadn't moved. He still held the letter as if it were a fragile gold thing. He cleared his throat gently. "There's more," he said. A murmur flickered. People hadn't expected more. They had expected the neatness of a command, a moment, a fix. But Claire had been thorough in life. She was thorough on paper. "Now that the chair is where it belongs," the letter continued, and a soft chuckle rolled through the room. "I want to say one more thing. Michael, kindness will make you late sometimes. Be late. Hold the door open until the last person gets through. And to the woman at your side, if he insists on holding the door for everyone, take his hand anyway. Bring him through too. Don't let kindness keep him outside." The quartet's violist sniffed audibly and then pretended it was a tuning issue. A groomsman pressed his lips together and looked at the ceiling because men are taught ceilings are safer places for tears than faces. "Nate," the letter said, and a current went through me so sudden my feet went cold. "You won't show anyone this part. You'll think it's prideful, but I want you to hear it spoken. You did it. You got him here. You did the mornings I thought I'd have. You did the hard talks and the softer ones. You remembered the dentist. You burned the toast. You kept a light in the window even when you were the only person who saw it. Take a seat at the front. You earned it. My name in her handwriting. My name in a stranger's mouth." I closed my eyes because the room was too bright. I felt absurdly like taking off my shoes. "To both families," Claire wrote. And here, the script on the page straightened, as if she were bracing her own shoulders while she wrote, "Thank you for loving our child into who he is. Please remember that adding branches doesn't mean cutting roots. Let this marriage grow wide, not thin, make space, especially at the front." The officiant lowered the paper a fraction. His eyes shone behind his lenses. He folded the letter with care and placed it on the lectern as if it were a living thing that needed rest. Silence held. Not the brittle kind that follows arguments. The full kind that follows a blessing. Then the whispering started. Not the mean sort, though that, too, moved like a cold draft from the left side of the room where a couple of Carol's friends exchanged looks. Mostly it was the sound of people recalibrating their sense of what mattered. Anna took a breath that fluttered the veil around her face. She turned a half step toward her mother. Carol had the look of a person who has prepared for every contingency, except decency arriving uninvited. Her eyes were glass. Her hands were rigid on her clutch. "Mom," Anna said quietly, the mic not picking it up, who had been a first responder type since he was 8, produced one from inside his jacket like a magician. Carol's mouth opened. Michael took the printed vows he'd worked on with Anna and a therapist in 3 90-minute sessions. The grandmother, throat and Carol's drew a line through 3 sentences, reached over and patted her knee once. The scratch of ink on paper was intimate as a heartbeat. "Let it go in a language older than critique. Eyes steady now." Michael scruffed things about always making you laugh with and taking out the trash even when it isn't my turn, he said. "Can we, a ghost of a smile settling in the..." His voice was rusty and soft and sure. "Those things stand. But I forgot." He glanced at me and then back to Anna. "I honor the people who built me. I need to change something before we do. I honor the people who built you. I promised to build with both of our hands, not just mine." The room didn't clap. It breathed. It held. Then a voice from somewhere in the middle, the bride's grandmother, thin and bright, said clearly, "Good," and clap once. That single clap broke the surface tension. Applause rose. Not ebullient, not party applause. Grateful. Carol did not clap. But she stared at her own hands like they had betrayed her by wanting to. The officiant nodded slowly. "Then," he said, "with that first promise spoken, we'll go on." He reached for his book and then stopped when a hand shot up politely in the 4th row on the bride's side. A man in his 50s stood. He had a farm tan and a suit that didn't quite fit, and the posture of someone who drove far to be here, and hadn't planned to stand at all. "I'm sorry," he said, voice thick with nerves. "I know it's not usual. I just want to say something." All eyes swung to Carol as if she were the traffic light. She froze, then made the smallest gesture, sit down, with her fingers. The man swallowed, glanced at the officiant, and then at Michael. "I'm Rick. I worked with Anna's dad when she was little. Carol's right that I'm like family." He looked at me. "Sir, I didn't know about the seating thing. If I had, I'd have given you mine. And I remember Claire." He smiled at a spot in the air, as if she might have been perched there. "She used to bring the best brownies to the kids' soccer bake sales. She always made an extra pan for the coaches, said men forget to eat when they're trying to make a point. She was right." A low hum of laughter moved. The room had found its own humanity again. "Thank you," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Rick sat. Carol's head turned toward him a fraction. Something sharp flashed in her eyes. The grandmother patted her knee again, a little firmer. The officiant lifted his book. "All right," he said softly. "Let's breathe and continue." He repositioned his feet, a man finding his balance. The quartet lifted bows, waiting for his nod. The room reset, but we weren't done with the letter. Not really. Words like that don't stay where you put them. As the officiant moved into the familiar cadence, "Dearly beloved," 2 things happened at once. The first, Anna's maid of honor, Mariah, slipped to the side aisle and bent to whisper into Ms. Harmon's ear, her face tight. The second, Evan leaned forward to put his pen away, and a folded, narrower envelope slid out of his inner pocket, hitting the floor with a soft, betraying pat. He flushed, grabbed for it. Michael saw the motion. "What's that?" Evan winced. Guilty the way brothers are when they're caught with a slingshot. Claire asked me to give you this later." He lifted the envelope with 2 fingers. On the front, in the same looping hand, were 4 words that slid under my skin like cold water. "Read after the vows." The officiant stilled. Anna turned, veil whispering. Carol stared at the envelope like it had teeth. A thin line of color crept up her neck. "Later," Evan said quickly. "She wrote it like a dessert. Not for now." Michael reached, touched the edge of the paper, then let his hand drop. "Okay," he said softly. He slid the envelope into his jacket pocket, right over his heart. From the side aisle, Ms. Harmon's voice, low and frantic, bled into the quiet. "Are you joking? Who moved the seating chart file? I printed the final one. No, the version without Mr. Carter. Because you told me the other was a draft. Carol, you said, shh, Mariah hissed. Too late. Half the front heard. It moved like heat in July through the rows. Heads tilted. Eyes found Carol. Her mouth set into a line that tried to be a door and failed to close. The officiant's gaze flicked to me. Do we stop again? And I shook my head once. Not now. Michael's fingers were tight around the vows. The chair under me felt like a promise I hadn't had to beg for. We went on. The readings were read, not just pretty lines, but words that remembered work and weather. Love is patient. Not the soft patience of putting up with, but the hard patience of staying when staying is unglamorous. The quartet found the melody again and held it without showing strain. When it was time for vows, Michael didn't read the new sentences. He spoke them like he was discovering them at the same time as the rest of us. I promise, he said, voice clean now, grief rinsed into something strong, to build a life that makes room for where we came from. I promise to honor truth when it's easy and when it makes us late. I promise to bring you through the door I hold for everyone else. Anna, breathing like she'd been running and had decided to keep going, took his hands. I promise, she said, and the tremor in her voice didn't make her weaker. It made her brave. To honor the roots that made you, and to learn to stand up to the voices that make me small, including the ones in my own head. Carol looked down then, eyes glittering. A tear slid and clung to the edge of one pearl before dropping into her lap. She didn't brush it away. Rings. Hands. A kiss that started tentative and turned sure. Applause that rose joyful, not polite. People turned to one another with that look weddings give them sometimes. Should we be better? Too? And a murmured yes moved through the pews like a draft of something warm. The recessional music sprang to life, sprightlier than before, like a bird that had shaken rain off its wings. Michael and Anna walked back down the aisle together, and when they reached my row, they stopped. Michael bent and kissed my cheek. Anna bent too, veil tickling my knuckles as she reached for my hand. Thank you, she whispered. And she meant for not fighting, and for letting a piece of paper do what people had refused to. They went out into the light. Guests followed in a loose river, relief humming at the edges of their chatter. Linda leaned down. You okay? Yes, I said, surprised to find it true. We were almost the last to leave. As I stood, the officiant caught my sleeve. He handed me the folded letter, edges warm from his fingers. Keep this close, he said, as if he knew things he couldn't possibly know. Outside, the air was bright after the cool of the chapel. A crowd formed around the steps. Cameras, laughter, someone herding flower girls like wayward chicks. The quartet had moved to a corner of the lawn and started something jaunty. The lilies gave way to cut grass and a hint of champagne. I found a patch of shade near the maple and let the breeze pull heat from my collar. People came, small circles forming and breaking, neighbors from years ago, co-workers of Anna's father, a kid I used to coach who now had a beard and the careful knees of a man who sits at a desk. They said the same thing, in different ways. That letter. And left the rest unsaid because sometimes gratitude is just the shape of a hand on your arm. Rick, the farm-tanned man, sidled up again, a glass of something bubbly in his hand that he looked mistrustful of. When my boy got married, he said, the pastor forgot the rings. We laughed about it for a decade. We'll talk about this for longer. He nodded toward the doorway where Carol stood with her mother, both of them in conference with Ms. Harmon and a woman carrying a laptop who looked like a storm cloud with nails. You rattled a tree that needed rattling. I didn't mean to rattle anyone, I said. Just wanted a chair. Chairs are political, he said dryly, and sipped. Who knew? Across the lawn, Anna touched her earrings, breathing very deliberately the way a person does when they're telling their body you're not in danger, while their brain replays something sharp. Michael tucked a stray hair behind her ear and said something that made her smile without effort. It landed in me like a clean bell. We had not broken the day. We had mended it where it was torn. Evan drifted over, hands in pockets, guilt and relief sharing his face. I didn't know when to give him the second one, he said under his breath. Claire cornered me at the hospice with that envelope 10 years ago and said, Evan, you were always the one who remembered his lunch. You'll remember this too. After the vows, not before. Don't mix dessert and vegetables. He exhaled. She made me swear. You did right, I said. He nodded toward Michael's jacket, where the corner of cream paper peeked from the pocket like a shy flag. I think that one's a different kind of bravery. A flock of bridesmaids swooped past, laughing, hurting, everyone toward the terrace for photos. As I moved with them, Carol stepped into my path. Up close, she looked smaller than she had from the front row. Miles of will can't make a person taller. Mr. Carter, she said, eyes fixed just to the left of mine, as if looking directly would cost her something she couldn't spare. I trust you're satisfied. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even really a sentence. It was a splinter. I'm relieved, I said. That's different. Relieved? She repeated, as if tasting the shape of it. Do you know how much work goes into a day like this? How many decisions? How many details? It's my job to keep trains on time. Trains don't change people, I said gently. Stories do. She pressed her lips together. I thought she might spit something quick and clever. Instead, she sighed, the sound of air leaving someone who has been holding too much of it for too long. I wanted perfection. You almost had it, I said, then the letter made it better. Her eyes swung to mine at last. For a second, there was a girl inside them, one who'd sat on a curb with skinned knees and decided next time she wouldn't run. I didn't want to share my daughter, she said in a voice so small I had to lean in to catch it. You don't have to share her, I said. You have to stand with her. She looked at her hands. I don't know how. Maybe she'll teach you, I said. If you make space at the front. She gave a tiny, humorless laugh and stepped aside. Pictures, she said briskly, as if ordering herself back into costume. We're very behind. We arranged in clumps, grandparents, cousins, the inevitable photo where everyone yells taller people in the back and then realizes tall people don't want to be in the back of their own day. In each frame, I felt the ghost of Claire at my shoulder, not sad, not even wistful. Present, like breath. After the family shots, the photographer called for parents with the couple. Anna slipped her arm through mine without asking if that was okay. Michael did the same. We stood like that, 3 linked people under a sky that had decided not to rain, and I let the shutter take something I hoped would live longer than any of us. When the session broke, people funneled toward the reception hall, music spilling out, the kind of clink that means silverware and the comfort of a seat you don't have to defend. Evan jogged up the steps to grab the door. As he swung it open, a sliver of paper fell from the jam. He stooped, picked it up, frowned. What's that? Anna asked. He held it up. A printed email. The subject line read, Final seating, remove. N. Carter. The sender, C. Harmon. The recipient list, coordinator, AV, floor captain. The timestamp was yesterday evening. Below the bold line, per Carol's directive. No assigned seat for father of groom. Place in back if necessary. Do not. Move front row cards. A hush pooled in the doorway. Anna blinked hard, twice. She turned toward her mother on the landing. Carol's mouth tightened. I said what I said, she murmured. I didn't want me, I supplied, not unkindly. I didn't want mess, she snapped, and then closed her eyes as if the word had cut her mouth on the way out. Then you shouldn't have invited people, the grandmother said, stepping between us with the quiet force of a tide. She plucked the email from Evan's hand, folded it in 2, tucked it into her purse like a receipt. We will not do this on the steps. We will eat. And later, we will talk. Grandma, Anna whispered. Later when? The old woman smiled, without sweetness. Before the cake, she said. After the speeches. She took my arm. Come sit at my table, Mr. Carter. I've been at the front long enough to make room. Inside, the room glowed. Candles and hurricanes, strings of tiny bulbs, the warm conspiracy of 100 conversations beginning again. My place card waited at the head table, right of Michael, left of an empty setting marked Claire in a simple script that made my breath catch and then steady. I looked at Anna. She shrugged, watery smile, small and brave. I added it this morning, she said. It felt right. The first toast came, Evan bumbling something sweet that made the room laugh in all the right places. Then Linda, voice steadier than her hands, told the story of Michael at 3, hiding a frog in Claire's mixing bowl, and Claire making cupcakes anyway, because a little fear in the batter keeps you humble. Forks tapped glasses. Waiters poured more gold into small clear cups. The band slid into a standard people recognized and then remembered they didn't know the words to. I felt the envelope in Michael's jacket in my own bones, as if the mere existence of Read After the Vows had shifted the pitch of the air. He caught my eye. We didn't need to speak. Dessert would come. So would the second door. And the day, already changed, would change again. The officiant's hands trembled as he turned the thick cream-colored envelope over, the words read before the vows etched across it in careful, deliberate handwriting. The sound of paper tearing echoed unnaturally loud against the vaulted ceiling of the wedding hall, where every breath seemed to have been stolen at once. The murmur of guests fell to nothing. Even the air hung still, suspended in the moment, between ignorance and revelation. The father stood near the back, motionless, though his heart thundered inside his chest so hard it felt visible. He had imagined this instant so many times, and yet when it finally arrived, he wished it hadn't. He wished his late wife could have been here herself, speaking for her own heart, instead of asking him to carry the weight of her last words. His palms were wet, his throat dry, but he didn't move. The envelope had been surrendered. Now the moment belonged to her. The officiant unfolded the letter carefully, his face stiff with confusion. His lips parted, then pressed together again, as his eyes scanned the first few lines. He paused, glanced toward the groom, who was standing tall but visibly nervous, then back down to the page. Clearing his throat, the officiant began to read. To my son, on the day you begin your own family. The room seemed to inhale. The voice of the late mother, though carried by the officiant's baritone, swept through the air with a force that stilled every shifting chair and silenced every whisper. Guests leaned forward. The bride's mother stiffened in her seat, her fingers gripping her clutch so tightly the knuckles whitened. The groom's hands, which had been steady at his sides, twitched slightly. His eyes widened. The officiant continued, his voice heavy with the weight of words written by someone who was not supposed to speak today. If you ever find yourself standing at the edge of a new beginning, if you ever find yourself starting a family of your own, I need you to promise me something. Promise me that your father will sit in the front row, because no family begins without him. A sound escaped the groom's throat, ragged and involuntary. His bride turned to him, startled, as tears slipped down his cheeks faster than he could blink them back. The words pierced him, years collapsing in an instant. His mother's hand on his as a boy, her smile in the kitchen, her laugh that used to fill the house. And now her words, like a ghost sitting in the very room, echoing through his wedding. The bride's mother shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting around as whispers erupted. Did you hear that? She said the father must sit in the front. But where is he? The father remained frozen, standing near the shadows at the back, trying to steady his breathing. He hadn't wanted it to come to this. He hadn't wanted the day to be stained by conflict. But this was never about him. It was about honoring her, the woman who had entrusted him with this moment years ago. The woman who had scrawled her dying wish in careful strokes, believing her husband would one day deliver it when their son stood at the altar. The officiant's voice grew steadier as he continued. Marriage is not only the weaving of two hearts, but the binding of families. And no son of mine should ever let his father stand outside of that bond. Bring him close. Sit him where I would have sat had I lived, right beside the heart of the ceremony. Because without him, there is no me. Without us, there is no you. The silence that followed cracked under the groom's sob. He covered his mouth, shoulders heaving. His bride reached for his arm, her own eyes brimming, but he pulled slightly away, not in anger, in devastation. His gaze swept the crowd desperately, until it landed on the one figure standing alone at the back. His father. His chest caved, a sound caught between a cry and a gasp escaping him. "Dad?" The word was barely audible, but the room heard it. The room felt it. The bride's mother stiffened. This is highly irregular," she stammered, her voice shaking but firm enough to carry. She half rose from her chair, her posture screaming control. "We had a seating plan. This isn't—" "No!" the groom snapped, his voice raw, slicing through the hall like thunder. The suddenness silenced everything again, even the scattered gasps. His chest heaved as he turned fully to his bride's mother, his eyes, red and blazing, locked on hers. "No seating plan outranks my mother's words." The bride's mother flinched as if slapped. The bride herself pressed a trembling hand to her lips, torn between loyalty to her mother and the aching love for the man beside her. The tension cut through every guest, some leaning back in shock, others forward in awe. The groom's voice shook but grew stronger. This letter is my mom's voice, and she's telling me, she's begging me, not to start this marriage without my father beside me." His body trembled. "If you thought you could erase him, then you were wrong." Whispers rose, threads of scandal unraveling through the crowd. Did they really exclude his father? That's cruel. How could they? But beneath the whispers was something else, a swelling empathy, a collective ache that rose from the mother's words, from the son's pain, from the father's lonely stance at the back. The father felt his knees weaken. He wanted to move, to step forward, but fear anchored him. Fear that he didn't belong, that he would only cause more rupture. Yet when his son's eyes held his, pleading, something shifted. The years of silence, of swallowing pride, of standing quietly in corners so others could shine, they all collapsed. This was not his moment. It was hers. It was his wife's. She had written him into this moment long before he could doubt himself. The officiant, clearing his throat, turned slightly toward the ushers. His voice, though shaky, carried authority. "Please, bring a seat forward, right beside the front row." The bride's mother opened her mouth to protest, but her daughter, the bride, placed a hand over hers, shaking her head. "Mom," she whispered, voice breaking. "Not today, please. Not today." The ushers moved quickly, dragging a polished chair from the side and setting it in the front row. All eyes turned toward the father. He stood frozen, his heart pounding like a drum inside a hollow chest. Then, with hesitant steps that grew firmer with each stride, he walked down the aisle. Every face turned, some sympathetic, some ashamed, but none looking away. As he passed, guests parted slightly, their whispers replaced by something heavier, something reverent. By the time he reached the front, the groom could no longer hold himself back. He rushed forward, arms wrapping around his father in a fierce, desperate embrace. The hall erupted in gasps, then applause, not polite clapping, but something raw, cathartic, like an audience watching justice long denied finally arrive. The father clutched his son, his own tears breaking free. "She's here," he whispered into his son's ear. "Your mom? She's here." The groom pulled back, wiping his eyes, his face blotched but lit with resolve. He turned to the officiant. His voice cracked, but he spoke firmly. I need to change my vows." The bride blinked in shock. "What?" she whispered. "I need to," he said louder this time, his gaze sweeping the hall. "Because I can't stand here, in front of my mother's memory, in front of my father, in front of everyone, and say the words I wrote before this moment. They don't fit anymore. They're not enough." The officiant, though startled, nodded slowly. "Of course, take your time." The groom turned to his bride, tears still flowing but his voice steadying. "When I wrote my vows, I thought I was writing about us, about promises between two people. but my mom's words. They reminded me that marriage isn't just about us. It's about family, about honoring where we come from, even the broken pieces, even the ones we almost lost. It's about building something that doesn't erase, but adds. The bride's tears spilled freely now. She nodded, clutching his hands. The groom's voice broke but soared. So today, I vow not just to love you. I vow to honor the people who built us, to never forget the ones who shaped us, even when they're gone. To carry them forward in every promise, in every fight, in every joy, because without them, there is no us. The room dissolved into tears. Guests dabbed their eyes with tissues, hands squeezed together, some openly sobbing. Even the bride's mother sat back, shaken, her expression unreadable, as if realizing the futility of her control against something as immovable as love and memory. The bride whispered, "I vow the same." And in that moment, the letter, fragile paper carrying the weight of a mother's heart, had rewritten everything. The vows, the seating chart, the meaning of the day. The father sat in the front row, his late wife's words echoing through him like she was whispering in his ear. For the first time in years, he felt whole. For the first time in years, he believed his son would never again stand without him, and the wedding, which had begun with division, transformed into something no one present would ever forget. The applause after the rewritten vows rolled like thunder through the wedding hall, shaking even the stoniest faces into tears or stunned silence. The father, seated now in the front row, could barely see through the blur of his own tears. His hands shook, but he clasped them together tightly, almost as if afraid that if he let go, this moment would slip away. His wife's words had carried her across time, and the miracle of that felt almost unbearable. Yet what no one realized was that the letter was only the spark. The fire it lit had just begun to spread. The reception begins. After the ceremony, the guests filed into the reception hall. It was a grand room glittering with chandeliers, with tables draped in white linen and polished silverware gleaming like ice. But despite the glamour, the air buzzed with whispers, like bees circling a hive too full of honey. "Did you see his father? I can't believe they left him out. The letter? Can you imagine?" The bride's family tried to mask their embarrassment with stiff smiles. Her mother in particular carried herself like porcelain. Perfect posture, perfect poise, but cracks spiderwebbing beneath the surface. She hadn't expected the day to spiral out of her control, and control was her language, her armor. The groom's father sat quietly at his table, still reeling, barely tasting the champagne handed to him. He could feel the stares, some curious, some apologetic, some admiring. For years, he had been a shadow in his son's milestones. Today, his late wife had dragged him into the light. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. A dance of ghosts. The bride and groom shared their first dance, a soft sway to a song chosen weeks before. The groom held her tightly, forehead pressed to hers, his body trembling with leftover emotion. He whispered, "I'm sorry for how everything just exploded." She shook her head, tears slipping down. "Don't you dare apologize. That was the most honest moment I've ever seen in my life." But her eyes flicked to the edge of the dance floor, where her mother sat rigid, her wine glass untouched. Her jaw clenched. The bride swallowed hard. Love for her new husband warred with years of conditioning, to obey, to preserve appearances, to avoid shame. For the first time, she realized she couldn't serve both, and she chose. She leaned in, kissed her husband softly, and whispered, "This is our story now, not hers." The father's speech later, when it came time for toasts, there was an unexpected pause. The best man had spoken, the maid of honor had shared a sweet memory, and the officiant had offered a blessing. The MC glanced at the list, then hesitated before announcing, "We have one more. The groom's father would like to say a few words." The room shifted. Chairs squeaked, necks craned, breaths caught. The bride's mother looked ready to protest, but the bride herself placed a hand firmly on her mother's wrist, holding her down. The groom stood, smiling through fresh tears, and gestured to his father. "Please, Dad." The father rose slowly, his tall frame trembling under the weight of so many eyes. He held no notes. He had no rehearsed words. But when he cleared his throat, the room obeyed, falling into silence. I wasn't supposed to speak tonight, he began, voice thick. To be honest, I wasn't even supposed to sit. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter, quickly silenced. He nodded. That letter, you all heard it. My wife, God rest her soul, wrote it years ago. She knew I would need her words because mine have never been enough. His voice wavered. He steadied himself with a breath. She wanted me here, not because I am perfect. I am not. I am stubborn. I've made mistakes, and I know I've kept too much pain locked inside. But she wanted me here because family is not about perfection. It's about presence. It's about showing up, even when it hurts, even when you feel unwanted. The bride's mother shifted uncomfortably. The father's eyes softened as he looked at the couple. Son, daughter, tonight you begin something new. But don't forget, you carry the old with you. The love that raised you, the sacrifices. You'll never fully understand the voices that still echo even when they're gone. My wife wanted me in the front row, but what she really wanted was for you both to remember you're never standing alone. He raised his glass, his hand trembling. To remembering, to honoring, to carrying forward, to love. The room erupted in applause, louder, freer than before. Guests stood, glasses raised high, tears gleaming in the candlelight. The groom's father sat down, overwhelmed, but for the first time in years, his heart felt lighter. The confrontation, but peace is fragile, and control, once lost, claws for return. Later in the evening, while guests mingled near the bar and music pulsed through the room, the bride's mother cornered the groom's father near a hallway. Her smile was sharp, her voice low enough not to draw attention. That was quite the performance, she hissed. But don't think for a second that I'll let you make me the villain in my own daughter's wedding. The father blinked, surprised, but his voice was calm. I didn't make you anything. My wife's words did. Her eyes narrowed. That letter, it could have been forged. Convenient timing, don't you think? His breath caught. The suggestion cut deep, like acid poured over a wound. How dare you, he whispered. That was her. That was all her. The bride's mother leaned in, her perfume heavy, her tone venomous. I have spent years planning this day. Do you think one piece of sentimental paper changes who matters? Most here? You are nothing but a shadow, and I won't let you hijack what belongs to my family. He clenched his fists, the urge to snap rising in his throat. But then he remembered his wife's letter, her plea for him to be present, not perfect. He straightened, looked her in the eye, and said quietly, You can cling to control, or you can choose love. But you can't have both. And whether you accept it or not, my wife is here tonight. And she chose me. He walked away before she could reply, leaving her trembling with fury and fear. A twist in the night. The night carried on with dancing, laughter, and stolen tears. But as the evening wore on, another twist unfolded. During the father-son dance, a moment unplanned but demanded by guests, the DJ cued a song that had once been the late mother's favorite. The groom froze, recognition striking him like lightning. His father's knees buckled, the first notes wrapping around his chest like his wife's ghostly arms. The groom turned to the DJ, confused. Who requested this? The DJ shrugged. Came in as a note on the playlist card earlier. No name. The bride's eyes widened. She reached into her bouquet, fumbling with the ribbon that bound it. Her fingers found something tucked deep inside, an old folded slip of paper. She pulled it free, unfolded it, and gasped. It was another letter, a smaller one, written in the same familiar hand. Her voice shook as she read silently, then aloud. If this song plays tonight, know that I am dancing with you too. Do not cry. Smile because love never leaves. And when the bouquet feels heavier than it should, look closer. I'll be there. The groom's face crumpled, his father collapsing into him, sobbing. The bride held both of them, her tears falling into the folds of her dress. Guests cried openly, the hall alive with a sense of the miraculous. The bride's mother sat frozen, color drained from her face, as if even she could no longer deny what had just unfolded. Resolution. By the end of the night, the bitterness had softened. The bride's mother approached slowly, hesitant, almost broken. She stood before the groom and his father, her lips trembling. I was wrong, she whispered, her voice raw. I thought control was the same as love. I see now it's not. I see what she wanted. I see what you both deserve. The groom, exhausted but softened, nodded. It's not too late to start again. His father, though wary, added quietly, family isn't about never failing. It's about always returning. The three stood in fragile silence, and though forgiveness was not immediate, a bridge had begun to form, shaky, imperfect, but real. As the last song played and the newlyweds prepared to leave, the father sat in the front row one last time, staring at the empty chair beside him. He closed his eyes, picturing his wife there, smiling, whispering, "You did it. You showed up." And for the first time since her death, he believed he had not failed her.